Okay, let's dive right in. That kitchen situation, right? We've all been there. Staring at those cabinets thinking, ugh, these look tired.
Yeah, and the idea of a full, like, rip out and replace job, the cost, the disruption, it's a lot.
Totally. So that big question pops up.
Yeah.
Do I just, give them a lick of paint? Or should I actually look into those budget-friendly new units you see advertised?
It's such a common crossroads for homeowners, and it makes you really weigh up the immediate cash versus maybe the longer-term picture and how much work you're willing to put in yourself.
Exactly. And we've both been looking at some info you shared, sort of digging into the pros and cons, the real details of both routes.
We have.
So our mission today really is to give you the practical insights you need, help you figure out the best way forward for your kitchen. We'll look at initial costs.
Yep, what you actually spend up front.
The time involved, like your actual time, your skills maybe.
Racial factor, yeah.
And importantly, what shape your current cabinets are really in. We want to make it clear, cut through the noise.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, isn't it? That perception about cost. People often just assume replacing is always way more expensive.
Right. But maybe not always.
Well, not necessarily, especially when you factor everything in. So let's start with that initial hit to the wallet. What does repainting actually cost if you do it yourself?
Okay, so the DIY paint job, you see the videos, look satisfying.
Uh-huh.
The materials seem pretty affordable at first glance.
Yes.
You need paint, obviously. And for a kitchen, you really shouldn't skimp. Get decent quality paint.
Definitely. Needs to be tough.
Then brushes, rollers, maybe some sandpaper, primer. Depends what you're painting over, I guess.
And cleaning stuff. Degreaser is essential. Kitchens get greasy.
Oh, yeah. So adding all that up, based on the info we saw, you might be looking at, say, 150 pounds up to maybe 700 pounds for materials, depending on how big your kitchen is.
That sounds about right. But, and it's a big but, that's just materials. The hidden cost is your time, your effort. That's huge.
Totally huge. Now, if spending like a whole week sanding isn't your cup of tea.
Which, let's be honest, for most people it isn't.
Right. You could hire a pro to spray them. Gives you that really smooth, almost like factory finish.
It does look very slick when done well.
But yeah, the cost jumps. For a decent-sized kitchen, maybe 20 units or so, you're probably looking at, what, 1,000 to 1,400 pounds? Ballpark?
Yeah, as a starting estimate, could be more, depending on where you are, the complexity.
And if you think, oh, perfect time for new handles.
Exactly. Add another 100 or 2 quid for handles and hinges. So, yeah, professional spraying looks great, but it's a definite step up in budget from DIY.
Okay, so let's switch gears. The other option, those new budget kitchen units. This is where it gets kind of interesting.
It does, because the units themselves can be surprisingly affordable, especially for smaller kitchens.
Yeah, we saw examples, didn't we? Like small basic sets starting around 350 pounds.
Yeah, from some places. Even the big DIY stores, an 8-unit example for under $1,000, or just buying an individual cabinet.
So just for the units, maybe 350 to 600 pounds for a smaller kitchen. Up to maybe 1,000 pounds, 1,500 pounds for a bit bigger.
Roughly, yeah. The unit cost is often really appealing. The catch, or rather the big variable, is the installation.
Oh, okay. So if you're handy.
If you're comfortable with flat pack, maybe some basic carpentry, you can save a lot of money putting them in yourself.
But if the thought of an Allen key brings you out in a cold sweat.
Then you need a professional fitter, and that's where the cost can really climb.
Right, because fitters charge a daily rate, don't they?
They do. Here in the UK, you're probably looking at 250 to 350 pounds a day, something like that.
Wow. So for a whole kitchen installation.
It adds up fast. We saw estimates like 2,200 pounds maybe for fitting a small kitchen, and over 4,500 pounds, like 4,600 pounds for a larger one, just for the fitting.
Crikey. So those cheap units suddenly become a much bigger project cost if you're not doing the labor yourself.
Exactly. It really throws the spotlight onto your own DIY skills, or lack thereof, and how much time you have.
Which brings us neatly to that whole skill and time thing. Let's talk about DIY repainting properly.
Okay, so yeah, a fresh coat of paint sounds easy, but getting a good lasting finish, that takes patience and skill.
And time. Lots of time.
So much time. First, the prep. You absolutely have to clean everything properly, get all that kitchen grease off.
The worst job.
Tell me about it. Then sanding. Got to give the paint something to stick to, maybe priming too.
And then you paint. Multiple thin coats are best, right? Not just slapping it on.
Definitely. Thin coats, letting it dry properly in between. And you've got to take all the doors off, the drawers, the handles.
Oh, God, yeah. Painting them flat, then putting it all back together, making sure it lines up.
It's fiddly. Realistically, for an average kitchen, you could easily spend 4, 5, 6, even 7 full days on it.
Wow. That's a whole week's holiday used on painting cabinets.
Pretty much. So you need to be honest with yourself. Are you a patient painter? Or will you rush it and end up with something less than ideal?
Fair point. Okay, what about DIY installation for the new units? Is that feasible for, like, an average person?
It can be. If you're generally competent with DIY, if you've built flat pack before, maybe done a bit of woodwork, you could probably manage it. You'd save a lot on labor.
But what are the tricky bits?
Well, assembling the units correctly is one thing. Getting them perfectly level and securely fixed to the wall is crucial.
Right, you don't want them falling off.
No. And then there's lining them all up neatly. Plus, if you're changing the sink or have integrated appliances, you might need some basic plumbing or electrical knowledge. Or know when to call a pro for that bit.
Okay. So it's not just like building a bookcase.
Not quite. And it can take ages if you're figuring it out as you go. Weeks, potentially, fitting it around work.
And mistakes could be costly.
Yeah, drilling in the wrong place, damaging a unit, a leaky pipe, could end up costing you more to fix than you saved. So again, realistic self-assessment is key.
Which is where the pros come in, saving you the hassle.
Exactly. Professional spray painting, they're fast, they have the gear, the expertise for that smooth finish. It's much less disruptive for you.
And a professional refit with the budget units.
Usually done in about a week, maybe less. They handle everything assembly, fitting, plumbing, electrics. Done properly, safely. You pay more, but you get convenience and hopefully peace of mind.
Makes sense. Okay, another really big factor. The state of your current cabinets.
Absolutely fundamental. Repainting only really works well if the cabinets you have are basically sound.
So if the actual boxes are warped or water damaged near the sink.
Or the doors are cracked, the laminate's peeling off badly, hinges are broken beyond repair.
Then paint is just papering over the cracks.
Pretty much. Paint looks nice, but it won't fix structural issues. It's just a surface treatment.
And what about how long each option lasts? Painted cabinets can chip, can't they?
They can, yeah. Especially DIY jobs if the prep wasn't perfect. A good pro spray job should last maybe 8 to 15 years with care. Budget units, depending on quality, maybe 10 to 20 years.
So if your cabinets are solid, painting's viable. If they're knackered, replacement is probably the way to go.
That's the long and short of it, yeah.
What about kitchen size? Does that change the calculation?
Oh, massively. We sort of touched on it with cost, but yeah. For a big kitchen, lots of cabinets.
Repainting starts to look much cheaper.
Generally, yes. The cost of buying and fitting, say, 25 new units compared to painting 25 existing units. Painting is usually significantly more budget-friendly.
But for a tiny kitchen, maybe just a few cabinets.
Then it gets much closer. The cost of buying, say, 5 or 6 new budget units might not be vastly different from the cost and the considerable effort of properly prepping and painting those 5 or 6 existing ones.
Especially if those cheap sets start around 350 pounds.
Exactly. For a small space, replacement might be surprisingly affordable and you get a totally fresh look, maybe even better functionality.
So bigger kitchen probably leans towards repaint. Smaller kitchen, maybe replacement is more competitive than you'd think.
That's a good rule of thumb to start with.
And lifespan, maintenance. We kind of covered lifespan. Anything on upkeep?
Both need cleaning, obviously. Painted surfaces might need a bit more care to avoid chips. Some new shiny finishes might show fingerprints more, maybe. But generally, both are manageable.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. Some tailored advice based on different situations.
Sure. So scenario 1. You've got a larger kitchen, the cabinets are basically solid, you don't mind a bit of DIY, and budget is the main driver.
Repainting yourself is probably your best bet.
Most likely, yes. Economical and satisfying if you do a good job.
Okay, scenario 2. Smaller kitchen, tight budget, maybe not super confident with DIY.
That's where you really need to compare costs carefully. Get a quote for professional spraying of your current cabinets and price up the cost of new budget units plus DIY installation if you feel up to some of it, or even professional fitting for just a few units. It might be closer than you think.
Right, do the homework. Scenario 3. You want a really top-notch finish, minimal hassle, and you're willing to spend a bit more.
Professional spray painting is a great option there. Or if the budget stretches further and you want everything brand new with zero effort yourself, a full professional refit using budget units.
Simple if pricey. And the final, obvious one, your cabinets are actually falling apart.
Yeah, if they're significantly damaged, warped, peeling badly. Replacement is really the only sensible choice. Don't waste time and money trying to paint over major problems.
Okay, that seems pretty clear. So wrapping up, there's no single right answer, is there?
No, definitely not. It comes down to your specific situation, your kitchen size, your budget, how handy you are, how much time you really have.
And what condition those cabinets are actually in. Be honest about that.
Absolutely. Weigh up all those factors.
So here's a final thought to you one. Thinking beyond just the pounds and pence, what's the real value of your own time? And how much disruption can you handle?
Yeah. And thinking about how long you'll be in the house, the potential lifespan of paint versus new units, which option gives you the best overall value for you in the long run?
That's the $1,000,000 or maybe £1,000 question.
It is. And maybe the best next step for you, listening now, is to get some actual quotes. Price up professional painting in your area and get costs for budget units, maybe with fitting too.
Yeah, seeing those real numbers for your kitchen often makes the decision a whole lot clearer.
Definitely. Concrete numbers beat guesswork every time.